Someone had entered into the storage facility where these frozen embryos were stored, ended up destroying them. The parents were seeking a wrongful death suit, and the Alabama Supreme Court, rightfully in my opinion, upheld that an embryo does constitute a human life. When everyone was talking about it, how IVF facilities were going to be prosecuted. So our state legislature jumped on it, and they passed essentially a bill granting immunity in these cases to IVF providers.
In a post-Dobbs world, there are so many states now where there is no abortion or abortion facilities that are open and operational. One of those states is Alabama. Our guest today, Craig Monger with 1819 News, has the inside look as to why Alabama continues to be an abortion-free state, but also getting a lot of news and attention over this topic of IVF. The Supreme Court made a decision not long ago about IVF and said that yes, children created in a laboratory should also have the same protections that children who are created naturally. And that created such a national discussion about this topic. We see now President Trump signing executive orders about IVF. This discussion has gone from something that's been talked about rarely to all of a sudden something that's being talked about all around the country, specifically because of Alabama. So our guest today, Craig Monger, is excited to talk about this topic, what's happening on the ground, and what are we going to do to protect absolutely every single human life. And so welcome to the program. This is Living Pro-Life. And we're so excited that we have Craig Monger here from the 1819 News, stationed there in Alabama, the great state of Alabama. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Brian. It's a pleasure to be here. Nice to meet you, actually. We had a nice little conversation beforehand.
We did. Well, I'm so excited that you're on the program, Craig. And we're going to start with some of the heavier topics here. So I know President Trump just put out an executive order regarding IVF, and I know Alabama has been in the middle of the IVF discussion. So take us back a little bit and tell us, why is Alabama so important in this IVF discussion?
Alabama kind of got dragged into the IVF discussion early last year. I think it was actually just over a year ago, after our state Supreme Court ruled in a wrongful death case that a human embryo did constitute a human life based on the Alabama Constitution. And therefore, this lawsuit that was going on in Mobile, it's the very south of the state, where someone had entered into the storage facility where these frozen embryos were stored, ended up destroying them. The parents were seeking a wrongful death suit. It ended up in the Alabama Supreme Court, and the Alabama Supreme Court, rightfully in my opinion, upheld that an embryo does constitute a human life based on our constitutional amendment that we did several years ago. It was an agenda that was put on a ballot, and the majority of Alabamians voted to ingrain the right to life in the United States, in the Alabama Constitution, and the Supreme Court was simply going off of what was there existing. And of course, it immediately went national, and everyone was talking about it, how IVF facilities were going to be prosecuted. Everything but the sky falling was coming from the national media specifically, and obviously a lot of the state media. So our state legislature jumped on it very quickly because they did not like the bad publicity. And they passed essentially a bill granting immunity in these cases to IVF providers. There was some pushback against that. There's obviously a lot of debate amongst Christians, really, about what IVF should or could look like. Some who support abolishing it. But to be honest with you, our state legislature wasn't ready for that conversation. And so they sped it through in about a week, and it actually led to a lot of drama, and yours truly getting called out from our House Health Committee chairman because he had previously set up debate on the bill. And there were some abolitionists in the state who had signed up to speak against it. And then whenever they showed up to speak against it, the chairman decided, hey, I don't want to do the public hearing, but I will let the supporters of the bill get up and talk.
Oh my goodness.
And so I wrote about that, and he was none too pleased. And It led to a whole big drama. So yeah, Alabama was really the central figure in the conversation about IVF, and Donald Trump obviously wouldn't be talking about it were it not for Alabama, and specifically for our senator here, Katie Britt, who he has credited with sort of getting in his ear and letting him know about the perceived benefits of IVF and how important it is. So the state legislature kind of balked at the bad publicity and immediately tried to get it dealt with. So it's an ongoing discussion. Actually, there are people who were actually lobbying at the state house last week for increased protections for IVF and at the state level. And I don't think the appetite's there for it with state lawmakers. So it seems like it's going to stay as it is right now.
Well, we see immunity as a serious issue right now. We see this. A lot of pharmaceutical companies now have full immunity. They can do really whatever they want to, and there's a full immunity clause. This doesn't allow us to have any kind of damages. So allowing full immunity for any organization is probably not good for those who might be damaged from that. Of course, I also agree with you on whether in a laboratory or in the womb or later on in life, there's still a human life.
Yeah, completely. And like I said before, our state lawmakers, although the vast majority of them claim to be Christian, every one of our every day in the House of Representatives, and I believe in the Senate as well, they open up with a prayer. But they are not ready for the conversation about what it means to be consistent with what the state overwhelmingly supported in 2019, that life begins at conception and that embryos included have a right to life, and that destroying them intentionally, which happens in IVF laboratories every day, is inconsistent with that position. But honestly, being consistent isn't exactly a priority for our state lawmakers.
Well, we had some discussion about how Alabama is, in fact, at least on the map, is an abortion-free state. Yet, there's some challenges I hear about how to enforce that and how to ensure that all life is protected. Maybe you can go into a little bit of detail on that.
In 2019, they passed a bill called the Human Life Protection Act. And that was essentially a near-all ban on abortion that they totally expected to get struck down in the courts because at that point, Dobbs hadn't happened yet, so Roe v. Wade was still the operating precedent of SCOTUS. When Roe was overturned in the Dobbs decision, that immediately went into effect, and our state attorney general began implementing it and started talking about what that meant provides in the state. So your abortion clinics, they went the way of the dodo. They went by. And since then, we've obviously faced questions and challenges that everyone that since Dobbs has had to face with the sort of conflict between state and federal law. So if a state says, hey, that abortion is not allowed, you're not allowed to order abortion pills, the milprednisone and stuff like that, you're not allowed to, the USPS doesn't have to abide by those. So they can be shipped. Now, your telemedicine places where it's an official prescription, that gets into a different area. But right now, currently, abortions can, and I assume are happening from using these abortion pills that you can order online fairly easily. So our state attorney general is actually, he's fighting in court right now the ability to try to prosecute those who travel out of state for abortions to an abortion-friendly area. I honestly don't have a tremendous amount of hope for that. The federal courts have done what they've done for years, and they don't show any signs of stopping. But he's also trying to figure out a way to prosecute those who use abortion pills in the state under chemical endangerment laws. Now, he hasn't had to test that in an actual case. The same thing with the abortion tourism stuff. So it's not going to become an issue, and we're not going to really see how the state has the ability to enforce those until it actually happens and someone actually attempts a prosecution. So as of right now, abortions proper, the way you think of abortions, going to a clinic, getting it done, that's not happened. And with the exception of, I believe the language was serious health risk to the mother, or if the fetus is unviable, I think is the language. I don't think that's the language. It's more tailored. But as far as I know, since then, there have not been any medical abortions in the state that I've seen.
Well, we're speaking with Craig Monger. Thanks for being here, 1819 News. We do want to talk a little bit about this equal protection bill. What is it? What is it doing there in Alabama, and what could we be learning in other states around the country?
Yeah. Well, there's obviously, when you look at some of the anti-abortion advocates, specifically on the Christian side, this has been a big push in multiple states currently right now in Georgia and in Kentucky. They're fighting similar battles. So there's several states where they're attempting this. Alabama is now one. They tried it last year, or State Rep Ernie Yarbrough here out of Trinity, Alabama. He filed it last session. It didn't really go anywhere. Now he plans to refile it. And he's told me himself that he has a Senate sponsor for the legislation as well, which he didn't have last session, which currently the 2019 law does not provide for criminal prosecution of a mother who who has an abortion done. There are penalties for the healthcare professionals that do, but currently not for the mother. And it would essentially establish consistency in our state laws. I don't think it has much of a chance because the political landscape, if you look at coming from the president, from Donald Trump, he even talks about, exceptions for rape and incest and the life of the mother. And with Dobbs, the field was ripe for all sorts of reformation in the way that individual states deal with abortion and taking even more of a hard-nosed stance. So I sincerely don't believe that the bill is going to go anywhere because there is an active pro-abortion lobby in the state, not officially, but just people that really want to have abortions. And simultaneously, you have people in the Republican Party that are squeamish about doing something that they think will make them look icky. Like I said, Alabama doesn't lead the way in anything virtuous or conservative or Christian. If anything does happen with an equal protection bill, it will be long after multiple other states have done so.
Again, we're speaking with Craig Monger at 1819 News. Again, thanks for being on the program. Just as we're looking at the landscape, we saw just last November a lot of states that fell to these ballot initiatives. But I know there's a lot of states that don't have an initiative petition process to get things on the ballot. Is Alabama one of those? Are we at risk with a potential ballot initiative, or are you somewhat protected?
How it works in Alabama is it has to be brought forth in the legislature first. So anything that's going to appear on a statewide ballot, which is what this would have to be statewide, it first has to go through the legislature, both bodies, the House and the Senate, and pass by a 3/5 majority. At that point, then the measure is placed on the next statewide ballot, whether it's a special or regular election, and then people could vote on it. As far as anything like that, like a pro-abortion measure, there's almost no chance that that's going to happen. We have a Republican supermajority, and while they might be really very squeamish about passing something like equal protection, they are just as squeamish about putting a pro-abortion measure on the ballot. So I wouldn't say that we're fully protected from something like that, but I don't think it would happen. And I don't think that the results would be what they were in Florida. The demographics are vastly different.
Well, Craig, one last question for you. We ask all of our guests is, what makes you pro-life? What's your pro-life story? If you're looking back, what brought you here today?
I tend not to even call myself pro-life. I tend to think of myself more as an abolitionist, and I hate actually to say that because there's a lot of abolitionists that are a little wonky. So that I understand that there are people in my own camp that have some odd behaviors, I'll say, but mainly it's because I'm a Christian. I became a Christian when I was in my early 20s. Immediately started ingesting everything that I could from theology to history, and I came into contact. I cannot remember how I came into contact, but I came into contact with the story of Hermit Gosnell. And I started looking through the pictures of what he had done in his clinic. Obviously, I was shocked. I didn't think that sort of thing happened. And that led me to a long rabbit hole of the Christian positions on abortion that exist now, and how politics has played into that, and the history of Roe v. Wade and the effects of feminism on abortion, et cetera, et cetera. And it honestly just lit a fire under me that I just couldn't explain. It's the greatest injustice of this century and the previous one, I would even say. The fact that we allow the mass slaughter of unborn children in numbers that just boggle the imagination. It filled me with grief. I remember when I was reading the crimes of Hermit Gosnell, And my wife came in, and I was in tears. I couldn't fathom that human beings were capable of doing this to one another. Now, maybe that was naivete, I don't know, but that passion hasn't gone away. I had been to abortion clinics. I'd seen the women come in, and I've seen them come out. I've stood with Christians while they tried to advocate for the lives of unborn children outside of abortion clinics. Those abortion clinics now, thank God, are gone. The fact that there's anyone that thinks that simply because of the size or the age of a baby that they just can simply be killed and sucked out with a vacuum, that still grieves me heavily. And I think it's a battle that still needs to be fought. It's not over by any stretch of the imagination. Dobbs is a win. But that same fire that I got reading about the vicious crimes of one doctor and realizing that that was happening all across the nation, that fire hasn't gone away. So I love people like Ernie Yarbrough, our state rep here, who is fighting the good fight there. He does what he can in the legislature. I'm not a politician, thank God, but I can simply try to draw attention to the discussion, to the arguments, and hopefully show where our lawmakers are inconsistent, where our vast Christian population is inconsistent. And this is something that needs to be thought about. This isn't something that can be treated lightly, and it shouldn't be treated lightly. Because I truly believe that if you wish to bring upon the blessings of God to your nation, you cannot do that while simultaneously slaughtering his image bearers over and over and over again.
Well, thank you very much, Craig. Again, Craig Monger at 1819 News. They're in Alabama, great state of Alabama, and really, really appreciate you being on the program today. Thank you again.
My pleasure, Brian. I'm happy to come back anytime. Thank you so much.